This extract is adapted from an article published in The Guardian in 2003 about two men who had to be rescued following an Antarctic crash. It is an excellent example of biased journalism and effectively uses both language and structure to position the reader to hold a negative view towards the two men. Explorers or boys messing about, either way, taxpayer gets rescue bill. The title cannot be ignored as it already invites the reader to take a side and decide how they, as potential taxpayers, feel about this accident. I will return to the way in which the journalist invites the reader to form a negative view about the men as the slides continue. Additionally, the subheading which states that the helicopter duo was plucked from the life raft is interesting in its use of the verb plucked, suggesting a helplessness on the men's part. The images here show the original story as it was reported in The Guardian in the bottom right-hand side of the screen and the Daily Mail in the top left. If you look at the Daily Mail article, you will see that the reporting is less biased than that of The Guardian. The reference to the two men as Britons rather than the more negative boys, as used in The Guardian, is one such instance of more balanced attitude within the Daily Mail. The first word there, which opens the article, creates mystery, as the reader does not know to whom the writer refers. This is a deliberate inversion of the journalistic triangle, as you can see to the right of the screen, which answers the who, what, where and when, providing potential readers with the essential information which will let them know whether or not they wish to read on. It is important to consider why Morris does not answer these important questions until paragraph 2, as this is a significant structural decision. It perhaps shows his frustration at the men's actions. The deliberate choice of farce in this opening paragraph is telling, and suggests that their actions are worthy of mockery, as a farce is a comic dramatic work with ridiculously improbable situations. By the second paragraph, Morris provides the answers to who, what, where and when, and this second sentence and paragraph does seem like it would be better suited structurally to appearing before the previous one. Morris refers to the expedition as an adventure rather than an expedition. Adventure has connotations of fun and a lack of planning, and is far less serious than the noun expedition. The verb plunged in their helicopter, plunged into the sea, is highly dramatic and is one of many exciting verbs used throughout the text to highlight the crash and subsequent rescue. Others, which will be discussed later, include scrambled and ditched. The men were plucked from the icy water, and this passive sentence structure suggests a lack of agency on the men's part. The plosive sound in plucked also creates humour, which reinforces the earlier use of farce. Despite the lack of planning suggested by the writer's use of adventure and the passive sentence, it appears that there was indeed some planning when a discerning reader reads between the lines. Mr. Brooks is in possession of a satellite phone, for instance. Morris invites indignation in the opening sentence of the fourth paragraph, the first lines on the screen. There was resentment is vague, as it does not say who felt this resentment, but offers only in some quarters, which deliberately hides the likely fact that it is Morris's himself who is arguing for the taxpayer. Even the price attends of thousands of pounds is not a mathematical figure. Morris continues somewhat vaguely in the next paragraph as he introduces nameless experts who questioned the wisdom of taking the helicopter to such a place, but shows expertise in referring to the model of helicopter, which goes some way to disguising the non-specific experts he cites. Returning to the there was sentence structure that he uses in the first line of this slide, Morris again cites mysterious others who have been confused without giving specific information. He is particularly disparaging in his use of the verb claims, which suggests that this may not be entirely true. This, along with the inverted commas around trusty helicopter, casts doubt and is mocking. It is later in the piece that the reader comes to understand that the helicopter had indeed undergone many trips. This is why the structure and order in which Morris reveals information in this passage is absolutely essential to understand, as he uses this to shape the reader's impression of the two men. Ms. Veste, the fiancée of one of the men, seems to be the source of the boys messing about, which appears in the headline as she is quoted as having said this, presumably to the press. That she did not know what the pair were up to suggests two mischievous boys rather than the two adult males with a great deal of experience. The men's crash is described as a drama, which downplays the life-threatening experience considerably. Morris shares the ages of the two men and the nickname of Mr. Smith as Q, creating mockery, as it perhaps brings to mind the James Bond character. Through the dramatic verb choices crambled, the writer suggests a lack of control in a similar pattern to plucked and plunged, mentioned earlier. Mr. Brooks is said to have asked his wife to call the emergency people, a vague term which sounds childlike and invites the reader to think that he was not prepared. It's important to remember that his words are being paraphrased here in this direct quotation from his wife. There are further clues that the men were indeed more organised that Morris would have his readers believe when we hear that he had with him a Breitling emergency watch. Breitling is a luxury brand and is perhaps deliberately mentioned to invoke ideas of wealth and privilege, and to fuel the view that those without as much wealth and privilege are paying taxes to support the rescue of these reckless individuals. The Royal Navy's ice patrol ship is involved in the men's rescue, and the drawn-out rescue procedure over these two paragraphs show the inconvenience their actions have caused to a ship doing what is more important business. In contrast to the verbs showing drama and a lack of control, this ship began steaming towards them purposefully. It is quite telling that one of the Royal Navy's own helicopters was driven back, suggesting that the weather was particularly inclement. Similar to the earlier verbs, ditched, again, suggests the lack of control mentioned earlier and is in juxtaposition to the actions of the Royal Navy ship. It is at this point in the article that the reader is given more information on the experience of these two men. This information is buried just after the halfway point of the article, but these men have an impressive portfolio of expeditions. The helicopter, which earlier appeared in inverted commas as trusty, is indeed shown to be precisely this, as it has undergone a 16,000-mile trip prior to this failed expedition. Nevertheless, Morris refers to his casting of doubt again when he states that Mr. Smith claims to have been flying since he was 5. This is then followed with proof of Mr. Smith's flying expertise as a champion pilot, as if Morris seeks to balance his negativity and bias. The opening, despite their experience, marks a structural shift as the writer moves away from past successes to past failure, and thus undoes all the earlier positive evidence of their experiences. The men are presented as sources of ridicule and are suggested by the writer to have caused a potential political problem between Britain and Russia. The passive mood in the wisdom was questioned is returned to here, but in this instance, an expert is named to bolster Morris's argument. He continues to cast doubt on the two men's abilities when he cites a spokesman for the men who states the flying conditions had been excellent. The mention of the Ministry of Defence is reported to have said that the taxpayer would pay for this rescue, but also that this is normal in the case of overseas rescue. A vague mention of a spokesperson at the ministry is cited as stating that no money is likely to be recovered, and this is likely included by Morris to provoke outrage in the tax-paying reader. The text closes on a mocking note and again returns to quote Ms. Veste, who is reported to have said they'll probably have their bottoms kicked, presenting the men as errant children, or indeed the boys messing about, in the title. As I said, bias and structure are key in this text. By not revealing key information until late in the text, the writer attempts to shape the reader's perception of the incident. The audience is thought to be middle-class tax-paying British people who read The Guardian and are likely to consider the wealth and privilege of these men to be frivolous. Thank you for watching. I hope this has been helpful.